Hello everyone, I'm P. Renada reporting to you from Glasgow, United Kingdom. And a few hours ago, kakatapos lang ng COP26, yung UN Climate Summit dito sa Glasgow. At basically may linabas na final decisions. And sa COP na to, there were two final decisions released. And basically they constitute what was agreed upon, everything that was agreed upon here in Glasgow. So I'm going to give a recap for you of what are the wins and what are the losses of vulnerable countries dito sa pact na ito. Ano ba yung napanalunan natin at ano naman yung na-expect natin pero hindi natin nakamit bilang mga vulnerable countries. So, just to give a recap, today was very dramatic. There were delays in earlier meetings because marami pang talks. Marami pang hindi nagkakasunduan on various aspects. So, na-delay by 3 hours yung unang major meeting for today. But finally, around 6 p.m., nag-reconvene for the closing plenary at doon in-adopt ng mga parties, which is another word for the countries who are in this meeting. They agreed on a global, what's called the Glasgow Climate Pact dun sa draft. So, ano ba yung linalaman ng Glasgow Climate Pact at ano dito yung mga positive, ano yung victories for the vulnerable countries like the Philippines. So yun, ano yung wins? Number one major win was that developed countries now promise to at least double the finance for adaptation for vulnerable countries. So what does adaptation mean? Adaptation basically is what countries should do to make their communities resilient to climate change. So the preparations we do para yung mga communities natin hindi ganun ka-vulnerable to flooding, mas prepared sila for typhoons, for example, or for drought. So yun yung adaptation. And so we have a current pledge na $100 billion a year to be provided to vulnerable countries. So here in Glasgow, developed countries promise to at least double that amount. Okay, so win yun. But caveat doon, kulang pa rin itong 200 billion a year. Vulnerable countries have actually said that they need $600 billion a year. So, medyo malaking gap, but hey, it's better than nothing, right? At least that's what they're saying earlier. Another win is may work program na finalize for the global goal on adaptation. So, what does work program mean? Work program in COP speak means na pag-uusapan siya every year, every COP. So parang scheduled siya na kailangan may deliverable, may targets. Yun yung ibig sabihin ng work program. So meaning, concrete siyang plan to create this global goal on adaptation, a new goal. So isang win din yon. A third win, Santiago Network, which is basically like a network that catalyzes technical assistance for developing countries whenever they experience severe devastation from disasters, climate risks like droughts, intense heat, sea level rise. So, basically, yung Santiago Network, yung magandang nangyari sa COP na ito, sa summit na ito, is na-flesh out yung functions niya. At nabigyan siya ng secretariat, it's assured the funding, and so that's good for vulnerable countries because now we have this platform that we can use to get technical assistance from developed nations para mas prepared tayo or to cope with typhoons which we experience every year to devastating effect. Another win is na-recognize here sa COP yung urgency of scaling up our mitigation targets. So mitigation is reducing carbon emissions. We have a goal to keep warming at 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The world has already warmed by 1.1 degrees Celsius. So, kailangan talaga natin to arrest that warming. And to do that, we need to have bigger, deeper carbon emission cuts. So, yun nangyari is nagka-work program din for this. So, dapat every year pag-uusapan to, kailangan mas paigtingin yung ating efforts to reduce carbon emissions. So, another win was there was also an agreement to strengthen our commitments to reduce carbon emissions next year already, 2022. So, kasi dati parang yung sinasabi was every 5 years kailangan i-revisit. This time, gagawing yearly. So, okay yan kasi syempre we need to keep improving and and seeing pa what else we have to do, ano pa yung kailangan gawin kasi global warming really is already showing catastrophic effects in many parts of the world. Another win was na finalize yung Article 6 dun sa Paris Agreement, which means that finally, the Paris Rulebook, which is basically parang implementing guidelines for the Paris Agreement in 2015, finally, after 6 years, na-finalize na. And what is Article 6? Article 6 basically has something to do with carbon credits, carbon trading. So, kumbaga, for example, may isang country na nakapag-reduce ng emissions niya na over and above what they committed to do, pwede niyang ibenta yung carbon credit na yun dun sa isang bansa na mayaman at siguro hindi pa niya na-reduce yung kanyang carbon emissions enough. So, carbon trading. So, win-win yon kasi yung developing country who went over and above can earn from going over and above, while the developed country who bought the carbon credit can help that developing country. So, kaya importante yung Article 6, but tricky yung Article 6 kasi some people say if it's not done well, if it's not done right, it might actually lead to more emissions. Kasi parang pwedeng dayain ng mga bansa yung carbon trading mechanism. So, finally, na-agreean yung Article 6. So, yun yung mga victories ng vulnerable nations. What were the losses? What were the, kumbaga, failures or compromises that they had to make do with during this COP? Well, number one, major thing is walang loss and damage finance facility. So, the past few days during the COP, pinag-usapan ng vulnerable developing countries na, hey, we need to have a financing mechanism for loss and damage aside from the finance streams for adaptation and mitigation. Kailangan may separate kasi napakalaki ng damages from climate change na na-experience ng mga vulnerable nations. So, walang mention of it. There was mention of dialogues, only dialogues to get this facility running. And according to some negotiators we spoke to, this was basically a compromise talaga of vulnerable nations. Kasi sabi ng mga ibang developed countries, nakuha nyo na nga yung Santiago Network functions, parang sobra na to. So yun yung nangyari. Kumbaga, parang na-water down yung proposed text na ganito. Alright, so another loss was the wala pa ring definition of the new global goal on finance, on adaptation finance. So, hindi pa rin natin alam how much do we need to collect from developed nations for this. So, yun, itong collective pledge. Another loss was yung sa fossil fuels. Dun sa earlier versions of the decision text, sinabi na phase out of coal and subsidies, phase out of coal-fired power plants and of fossil fuel subsidies. So ito yung mga assistance na binibigay sa fossil fuel industry para bumaba yung presyo ng oil, ng petrolyo. So dun sa new text na inadopt after an intervention by India, naging phase down na lang. Phase down. And earlier today, there was also an addition of the word unabated and inefficient. So, ano yung ibig sabihin nun? Diba? What is the meaning of this? So, pag dun sa new version, basically, medyo unfair siya, according to a negotiator, to developing countries. Kasi when you say phase down of unabated coal-fired production, unabated production of coal-based power, and inefficient subsidies, basically this kind of targets the power industries of vulnerable nations kasi yung mga developed countries, meron na silang technology for coal that is captured. Yung emissions ng coal plants nila can be captured by this technology called carbon capture and storage. So, expensive technology to and mostly developed countries lang yung may ganito. So, basically, pag sinabing phase down of unabated coal, exempt sila kasi yung definition ng unabated coal, yun yung walang carbon capture. So basically, safe yung developed countries kasi they don't have to face down their coal power plants kasi anyway, may carbon capture. So ganon. And then dun sa inefficient subsidies, that also is kind of unfair to developing countries kasi most of the time, these efficient subsidies are those na targeted subsidies and those usually can be found in developed countries Whereas yung developing countries, they can be, may interpretation na their subsidies are inefficient. So basically, parang this phrase makes it sound like developing countries will be the only ones forced to face down their unabated coal production, coal power, and their subsidies for fossil fuels. So yeah, it was definitely dramatic na nangyari yung sudden change, and in fact si COP26 President Alok Sharma apologized for it, na sudden siya, na wala man lang consultation. It was basically like an ambush change in the final document. So yeah, so ano yung feedback, ano yung moral ngayon ng mga vulnerable developing countries? Well, a lot of them feel na bitin. May isang negotiator, yun yung word na ginamit, bitin siya. Kasi nga marami pa ring left hanging, and they didn't get a lot of what they wanted, what they really aspired for. But there are also some negotiators, like those from Marshall Islands, from Fiji, from Tuvalu, who were saying na, hey, it's better than nothing. Progress is better than no progress. And they decided to just compromise this time, kasi anyway, the final decision has a lot of wins for them also. Mga never nangyari in the history of COP, nangyari naman this COP, and particularly yung explicit mention of fossil fuels. In the 25 years of climate summits, never na-mention yung fossil fuels sa isang climate agreement. So it's a major deal. But at the same time, they know that there is much work to be done, lalo na dun sa finance mechanism for loss and damage. And yun yung definitely, they will really aspire to push for that in COP27, which will be the COP next year. And so hopeful pa rin sila. They feel that the negotiators, for example, dun sa G77 in China group, which represents 134 developing countries, they pat themselves in the back for at least getting things done. Diba, Santiago Network, may progress doon, and basically setting the groundwork for yung financial mechanism nga for loss and damage. So yeah, but of course there are activists who feel that the decision left vulnerable countries behind, left them hanging, kasi ang dami nilang kinompromise on major points, and what did they get in return, diba? Like, yes, there are big announcements, big major concessions, but none of them are super concrete, and a lot of it has to be fleshed out some more. So but nevertheless, it was a historic summit. Most are, there's something for everyone, I guess. There's something to be sad about, but there's also something to be happy about, and that's a little bit better naman than some tense moments in the COP, when there were even some African countries saying no deal unless may commitment on climate finance. So at least we're walking out of this with something in our hands, and sabi nga ng ibang negotiators, it's a balanced document for them, and it might not be like as radical as some would have wanted it to be, but it just reflects how very difficult talaga it is to get all countries with different national circumstances to agree on something that affects everyone. So art of diplomacy, there's another round next year, and there will be future meetings even in between called intersessionals, and we will see how these discussions will progress during these meetings. So yun, also for reporters, super tired, still have to write so many things, but definitely it was great witnessing this historic event, being here in Glasgow to witness countries coming together despite everything, diba? They still produced something that we can work with. So that's all from me here in Glasgow, and we hope you've been learning a lot from our coverage. I'm helped by G. Geronimo in Manila, who is doing awesome work supporting the coverage here. And watch out for all our other stories after this video. We'll be writing some more. And stay tuned for more updates on Rappler. Thanks for watching. Bye.